A broken cowboy hid from the world until an Apache woman arrived on a dying horse. Cole Harrington wiped the sweat from his brow and squinted at the dry, cracked earth beneath his boots. The redstone plains stretched for miles, endless waves of brown grass and red dust, baked hard under the hot sun. The ranch had belonged to the Harrington family for generations, and Cole had grown up chasing cattle across these plains, fixing fences and learning to survive on the stubborn land. But this year the drought had been worse than any he remembered. His cattle had grown thin. The creek that ran along the edge of the property had dried, and every morning he woke to the same bitter thought: he needed water. For weeks, Cole had searched the property for a new source. He had walked miles of dry riverbeds, examined cracked soil for signs of hidden springs, and even tested old wells left abandoned by his father. Nothing. Finally, he decided he had no choice. He would dig a new well in the small flat area near the western edge of the ranch. The spot had always seemed empty and lifeless, but his instincts told him it might hold something below the surface. Cole grabbed his shovel and began to dig. The dirt was hard, packed by years of sun and wind, and every swing of the shovel sent small clouds of dust into the air. His muscles ached quickly, but he kept going. Sweat ran down his face, mixing with the red dust that clung to his skin. Birds circled overhead, and the occasional coyote howled in the distance, but otherwise the plains were quiet. By late afternoon, Cole had dug about 6 feet down. His hands were blistered, and the sweat stung his eyes, but he felt a small thrill at the progress he had made. Then his shovel hit something solid. A metallic clang rang out, sharp against the soft hum of the wind. He froze and leaned on his shovel, staring at the small rim of metal just visible in the hole. "Now that's strange," he muttered to himself. He knelt and brushed the dirt away with his hands. The metal was smooth, circular, and seemed too perfect to be a rock. It gleamed faintly in the sunlight, almost as if it was polished. Cole frowned. He didn't remember ever seeing anything like it on the ranch. His father would have mentioned it, or maybe his grandfather. He pulled at the edge with his fingers, but it wouldn't move. Cole stood and scratched his head, thinking. He knew he shouldn't be too curious after all. It could be dangerous, but something about the metal rim drew him in. He decided to come back the next morning with proper tools. That night he could not stop thinking about it. He lay on the wooden floor of his small ranch house, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind whistle through the cracks in the walls. And then he heard it. A faint whisper, almost like a sigh, came from the direction of the hole. Cole sat up so fast his head nearly hit the ceiling. He listened. Nothing. Maybe it had been the wind. He told himself that. But as he lay down again, the whisper returned. Softer this time, almost a breath, and it sounded like voices. Not words he could understand, but the sound of people speaking, distant and hollow. Cole rubbed his eyes. He had been working too hard, maybe. The heat and exhaustion were getting to him. Still, he couldn't ignore it. The voices seemed to come from the earth itself. He stared out the window toward the spot where he would dig the well, and a chill ran down his spine. By sunrise, Cole was back outside with a shovel, a pickaxe, a lantern, and a rope. The morning air was sharp and clear, and the first rays of the sun turned the plains golden. He knelt at the edge of the hole and examined the metal rim. It was embedded in a circle of stone, and the edges seemed to continue downward into darkness. He shone his lantern into the hole. The light fell on a spiral of steps, carved carefully into the rock. Steps? Beneath his land? He felt his heart hammer in his chest. He had not expected this. The well had turned into something impossible. He knelt and peered closer. The stone steps were clean, almost polished, and the metallic veins that ran along the edges glowed faintly under the lantern. They pulsed softly like a heartbeat from deep below the earth. He knew he should turn back. Anyone else would have. But curiosity gnawed at him stronger than fear. He tied a rope to a nearby post, wrapped it around his waist, and began to descend. The steps were narrow and cold, the rock smooth beneath his hands. With every step, the whispering grew louder. It was not random. It carried rhythm, a musical quality. Laughs, cries, warnings, but not a single word he could understand. Cole's mind raced. What could be down here? Was it some forgotten mine, an old tunnel left by someone long gone? No, the metal rim, the glowing veins, the perfection of the steps. This was not ordinary. It was something else. Something alien, he thought. But the word felt too big, too bold. Still, his instincts screamed that he had stumbled onto something extraordinary. The stairs twisted down for what felt like hours, although it could only have been minutes. The air grew cooler and denser. He could feel the hum of energy in the walls, vibrating faintly under his fingertips. Then he stepped into a small chamber. It was round, made entirely of stone and metal fused together, like nothing he had ever seen. Glowing lines crossed the walls in complex patterns pulsing with light. The whispers became clearer here, almost like they were speaking directly to him. Cole swallowed hard. He tried to call out, to say something to whoever or whatever was down here. "Hello?" His voice echoed unnaturally, bouncing off the walls and disappearing into the shadows. The whispers responded, not in words but in emotion. Sadness, laughter, fear, hope, all rushing at him at once. He felt a wave of dizziness, his knees weakened, and he had to hold on to the edge of the wall. The voices seemed alive. They moved with purpose, aware of his presence. He could almost sense eyes on him, though he could see nothing. Part of him wanted to run back to the surface to escape, but another part wanted to know more. Cole took a deep breath and explored further. The chamber was empty, save for a pedestal at the center. On it was a small device, hovering a few inches above the stone surface. It glowed softly, shaped like a sphere, and when he reached toward it, it floated closer to his hand, as if curious about him. He pulled back suddenly. This was no ordinary tunnel. He had found something remarkable, something dangerous, and yet he could not stop staring at it. He felt the pull of the unknown calling him deeper. The staircase beyond the chamber twisted down further into darkness, and the whispers grew more urgent, like they were urging him to continue. Cole looked up toward the surface. The sun was still shining, the plains were still dry and quiet, and no one would ever believe him if he told them what he had found. And yet, he knew that he had crossed a threshold, one that could change everything about his life, his ranch, and perhaps the entire world. He sat on the stone floor and wiped his face with the back of his hand. He had come to dig a well, to save his ranch from drought. But what he had found was a doorway to something unimaginable, and as the voices whispered around him, strange and beautiful and terrifying, Cole made a silent promise. He would not turn back. Not yet. He had to know what lay at the bottom of this strange underground world.
Outside, the wind blew across the redstone plains, carrying the dry scent of dust and grass.
The world went on, unaware of the secret that waited beneath the earth, just under Cole's feet. And deep below, in the heart of the staircase and chambers, the voices hummed, as if greeting the new visitor who had dared to listen. Cole took a deep breath and let his eyes adjust to the dim light of the chamber. The small sphere hovering on the pedestal pulsed gently, casting faint blue shadows on the walls. He reached out once more, careful this time. The sphere floated closer, hovering just above his palm. He could feel a strange energy from it, not like electricity or heat, but something alive, something aware. His heart pounded as the whispers swirled around him. Not just sounds, but emotions that tugged at him. Curiosity, excitement, fear, and wonder all at once. He forced himself to step back. "All right, Cole," he muttered. "Let's see what's down there." He turned toward the staircase that twisted further into darkness. The steps went down and down, disappearing into a black pit that seemed endless. Every step he took made the whispers stronger, clearer. He could almost understand them, but not fully. The voices were singing in a language his mind could not grasp, yet he felt their meaning, a mix of warning and welcome. The air grew colder with each step. His boots kicked up fine dust, and the metal veins in the walls glowed brighter as he descended. Shadows danced, stretching across the stone walls, making the stairs feel alive. Cole could not see the bottom, but he could hear movement, soft shuffling, like something waiting for him below. He gripped the rope tied around his waist and continued down, careful not to look too long at the shadows that moved in unnatural ways. Finally, after what felt like hours, he reached a landing. It was a large room, wider than any barn he had ever seen, carved directly from the rock beneath the plains. The walls and ceiling were embedded with the same glowing metallic veins, pulsing rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. The room was empty except for strange devices that hovered midair, spinning slowly and emitting soft hums. The whispers here were louder, almost overwhelming. Cole walked slowly through the chamber. He reached out to touch one of the floating devices, and it shivered, reacting to his hand. Tiny lights raced across its surface, forming symbols he did not understand. His mind tried to process it, but the patterns were too complex. It was not just a machine. It was intelligent. It seemed to be studying him, curious about the new visitor who had dared to descend into their world. Suddenly, a bright line of light shot across the floor. Cole jumped back. The whispers grew urgent, almost panicked. He realized the light was not just a beam, it was forming a map of the surface above. Hills, rivers, the outline of his ranch, even the positions of his cattle were displayed in glowing detail. Cole's mouth went dry. This underground place was not just a tunnel, it was a control room, a monitoring station, a place beyond anything humans had built. He sank to his knees, overwhelmed. The whispers calmed slightly, as if noticing his fear and trying to soothe him. He understood then that these voices were not just sounds. They were conscious, aware, intelligent. They could think, feel, and communicate, and they had been waiting for him somehow. Cole's curiosity burned stronger. He stood and began to explore more carefully, moving past the hovering machines and glowing panels. The air smelled faintly of metal and ozone. Strange symbols glimmered on the walls, patterns that seemed to shift when he looked away. He had never felt anything like it, and yet a strange familiarity pulled him onward, like he had been meant to find this place. At the far end of the chamber, a door, or what looked like a door, appeared in the wall. It was made of the same glowing metal veins, pulsating softly. Cole hesitated, but his curiosity pushed him forward. He reached out, and the door slid open silently. Beyond it was a corridor, long and winding, with walls that seemed to hum with energy. The whispers followed him, growing louder, more insistent. He stepped inside. The corridor was lined with small chambers, each glowing faintly. Inside, he could see objects that seemed alive. Small floating spheres, strange crystals that moved slowly, devices that twisted in midair. Some of the objects responded to his presence, floating closer, spinning and forming patterns he could not understand. He realized he was not just exploring a tunnel, he was exploring a living system. Cole felt a flicker of fear. What if he was not welcome here? What if he had crossed a line that should never be crossed? The whispers intensified, but now they carried something different. Impatience. It was as if the underground beings were urging him to move faster, to go deeper, to find what they wanted him to find. Finally, he reached the end of the corridor. Another chamber opened up before him, larger than the last, filled with light and shadow. At the center, a pedestal held a crystal, glowing with a soft white light. The whispers grew into a chorus, almost singing directly into his mind. They did not speak words, but the meaning was clear. This was important. This crystal was a key, something that had been waiting for him. Cole approached slowly, his hand trembling as he reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the crystal, a wave of images flooded his mind. He saw the plains above, the ranch, his family, and the generations of people who had lived there. Then he saw the underground chambers, the floating devices, and the glowing veins. And finally, he saw something else, a vision of a cowboy, much like himself, digging a well long ago, as if the cycle had repeated many times. He stumbled back, trying to make sense of what he had seen. The crystal pulsed gently in his hand, and the whispers softened, almost approvingly. Cole realized that this underground world had been observing humanity for centuries, perhaps millennia. They were intelligent, ancient, and patient. And now they had chosen to reveal themselves to him. His mind raced with questions. Why him? Why now? What did they want from him? The whispers answered him in feelings rather than words. Knowledge, guidance, and perhaps a test. They did not intend harm, but they needed a human who could understand, who could act as a bridge between their world and the surface. Cole looked around the chamber, his mind spinning. He could take the crystal and learn from it, gaining knowledge and power beyond anything he had imagined. Or he could leave, taking nothing, returning to the surface with the safety of ignorance. He felt the weight of the choice pressing down on him. As he stood there, trying to decide, the whispers changed again. They were no longer just curious. They were instructive. They pointed him toward a new staircase, deeper and narrower than the last. Cole felt a surge of fear and excitement. He understood then that this journey was far from over. The underground world had more to show him, and it would not reveal itself all at once. He took a deep breath, tied the crystal to his belt with a piece of rope, and stepped toward the new staircase. The metal veins on the walls glowed brighter, lighting his path. The whispers followed, guiding him downward, urging him to see what lay at the bottom. Cole's heart pounded with anticipation. He had begun the day digging a well, hoping to find water for his ranch. Now he was part of something much larger, a mystery that stretched beneath the redstone plains, ancient and alive. Every step he took carried him further into the unknown, and yet he could not stop. The underground voices were part of him now, calling him forward, promising answers to questions he had not even thought to ask. And so he descended, step by step, into the depths of a world that had waited patiently for centuries, ready to reveal its secrets to the cowboy who dared to listen. Cole tightened the rope around his waist and took the first step down the narrow staircase. The walls here were closer, the air heavier, filled with a strange metallic scent that made his nose tingle. The glowing veins in the stone seemed brighter, pulsing faster, like a heartbeat accelerating. The whispers followed him, softer now, almost gentle, but filled with meaning he could not fully grasp. They were alive, aware of his every thought, and somehow guiding him deeper into their world. He reached the bottom and found himself in a new chamber. This one was larger than anything he had seen before. The ceiling arched high above him, disappearing into shadow. Strange shapes floated in the air, some glowing softly, others spinning silently. The walls were covered with patterns that shifted and moved, forming shapes like constellations, but not like any stars he had ever seen. The floor beneath him seemed to hum in rhythm with the veins in the walls, vibrating faintly against his boots. Cole stepped cautiously into the room. The whispers surrounded him, urging him forward, guiding him toward the center, where a platform hovered slightly above the floor. On the platform, a large holographic map projected into the air. It showed the surface world in detail, the plains, rivers, hills, and towns, but also other regions he did not recognize. Strange cities rose from deserts, forests glimmered with unnatural colors, and lights moved across the land like living beings. He reached out to touch the map, and it shifted under his hand, showing scenes from distant worlds he had never imagined. As he stared in awe, the whispers became clearer. This time he could almost understand them, not with words, but with thoughts. They were showing him histories, stories of civilizations that had come and gone long before humans had walked the earth. They spoke of beings that built worlds underground, that watched, guided, and learned from other species. And now they were showing him that they had been watching humans for a very long time. Cole felt a chill run down his spine. He had expected strange machines, perhaps advanced technology, but this was something beyond comprehension. It was as if the underground world was alive, conscious, and aware of him as much as he was aware of it. He realized that this place had chosen him, that the whispers had called to him for a reason. A sudden movement caught his eye. One of the floating shapes drifted closer, forming a humanoid figure made entirely of light and metallic particles. Its eyes, or what seemed like eyes, glowed with an intense white light. Cole froze. The figure tilted its head, observing him, and he felt a direct connection, as if it could see into his mind. The whispers changed, becoming a single coherent message. "Do you accept our guidance?" Cole's throat went dry. I don't know," he stammered. "I just want to understand." The figure responded with a gesture, a wave of its glowing arm, and suddenly the room shifted around him. Walls of light extended outward, forming new chambers filled with more devices, more floating objects, and more symbols that moved and danced. The whispers intensified, now clearly guiding him towards something deeper, something important. He followed the invisible path, stepping carefully over a low platform that hummed beneath his feet. The walls pulsed with light in response to his presence. Each step seemed to unlock new patterns, new knowledge, though he could not comprehend it fully. The feeling was overwhelming, but also exhilarating. It was as if he were learning without learning, understanding without words. At the end of the path, he reached a vast chamber, and his eyes widened. The ceiling disappeared into darkness, and the walls glowed with veins of energy that branched like trees. At the center of the chamber floated a massive structure, shaped like a dome, with intricate patterns spinning slowly on its surface. The whispers now surrounded him completely, filling his mind with visions of the past and future, of worlds above and below, of beings that had lived and died long before humans. Cole realized that this structure was not just a machine. It was a repository of knowledge, a library of civilizations, a living archive. The whispers told him that it had existed for countless centuries, waiting for someone who could understand, someone who could interact with it. And now, that someone was him. He stepped closer to the dome. As he did, a new vision filled his mind. He saw a cowboy much like himself digging a well centuries ago, discovering a hidden staircase just as he had. The vision showed the cowboy hesitating, unsure whether to go deeper, just as Cole had hesitated. Then the vision shifted, showing the cowboy stepping down, exploring the chambers, learning, and eventually becoming part of the underground world. The realization hit Cole like a hammer. History had repeated itself, and he was part of that cycle. The whispers softened, almost like a sigh. They seemed to be testing him, waiting for him to make a choice. Cole understood now that this underground world offered power and knowledge, but at a cost. Those who stayed became guardians, intermediaries, never returning to the surface in the same way. They could guide, observe, and protect, but they also gave up the world above, the sun, the wind, the plains, and the freedom of human life. Cole stepped back, trying to breathe. The choice was clear, yet impossible. He could take the knowledge, learn from the underground world, and perhaps save his ranch, even gain power beyond imagination. Or he could turn back, leaving everything behind, preserving his freedom but knowing he might never uncover the truth of what lay beneath the plains. The floating figure approached him again. Its eyes glowed softly, and it extended a hand toward him. The whispers formed a single thought. Decide, human. Your world or ours. Cole hesitated, looking around the chamber. The machines, the symbols, the glowing veins, they all seemed alive, waiting for his answer. His mind raced. He thought of the ranch, of his cattle starving in the drought, of the creek that had dried, of the family that had worked this land for generations. The underground world offered knowledge that could save everything above, but at a cost he could not yet fully understand. Cole closed his eyes, trying to calm the storm of thoughts in his mind. He realized that he did not need to make the final decision yet. He could explore more, understand more, and learn what the underground world wanted from him. For now he would continue, follow the whispers, and see where this path led. He moved past the floating figure and toward a narrow passage at the edge of the chamber. The passage descended deeper, the walls narrowing, the light from the veins dimming slightly. The whispers became more urgent, pulling him forward, guiding him step by step. Cole felt a strange exhilaration, a sense of destiny that he could not ignore. He was no longer just a rancher digging a well. He was a traveler in a world beneath his own, a world alive with knowledge, secrets, and voices that had waited centuries for him. As he descended, he discovered small alcoves along the walls. Each contained objects that defied explanation. Crystals that floated and rotated, devices that emitted soft melodies, and panels that projected images of faraway places. The whispers explained nothing in words, yet he understood them. This was a place of learning, of observation, of connection. Each object was a story, each pattern a lesson. And he, Cole Harrington, was part of it now. The passage twisted downward, and finally he reached a chamber so vast that he could not see the walls. The ceiling was lost in darkness above, and the floor glowed faintly beneath his feet. In the center, a pool of shimmering liquid reflected the light of the veins. The whispers focused on this pool, their tone different, less guiding, more expectant. Cole approached carefully. As he looked into the liquid, visions appeared. He saw the plains above, his ranch, the cattle, the wind blowing through the grass. Then he saw other places, deserts, mountains, cities far beyond his world. He saw humans and creatures, life forms he could not name, civilizations rising and falling, and finally he saw himself, standing here, looking into the pool, a part of something far greater than he had ever imagined. Cole stepped back, trembling. The whispers softened, almost like a song. They were waiting, not pressuring him, allowing him to choose. He realized that the underground world had given him a gift, the chance to see, to understand, and to decide his path. But the choice was not yet complete. He looked around the chamber, the glowing veins, the floating objects, the pool of shimmering liquid, and felt the weight of what lay before him. The underground world was alive, conscious, and patient. It had waited centuries for someone like him, and now the responsibility rested on his shoulders. Cole knew that the next step would be the hardest. He would have to confront the full truth of the underground world, understand what it wanted, and decide whether he could give himself to it, or whether he would return to the surface, carrying only the memory of what he had seen. With a deep breath, he stepped forward, toward the pool, toward the unknown, knowing that the world above and below would never be the same again. Cole stared at the shimmering pool, his reflection twisting with the light from the glowing veins in the walls. The whispers circled him like a gentle wind, carrying both warning and promise. He felt their presence deep in his chest, an almost physical pressure urging him to decide. Every fiber of his being was alive with fear, curiosity, and excitement. He had come here seeking water for his ranch, for survival, but now he understood that the choice before him was far greater. This underground world offered knowledge, power, and answers, but at a price he could not yet measure. He knelt beside the pool and dipped his hand into the liquid. It was cool and smooth, flowing over his skin like water, yet feeling alive, almost aware of him. The surface rippled, forming visions again, clearer than before. He saw his ranch, the parched land above, the thin, hungry cattle. Then he saw other visions. humans discovering technology too advanced for them, cities rising and falling, lives shaped and changed by knowledge they barely understood. And finally, he saw himself, not as the rancher he was, but as a guardian of this underground world, standing in the chambers, surrounded by the voices and light, no longer returning to the surface. Cole pulled his hand back, his heart pounding. He sank to his knees, trying to think. The whispers softened, wrapping around him like a cloak, speaking not in words but in thought. This is your choice, human. The path you take will shape both your world and ours. He thought of his ranch, the people he loved, the animals depending on him. If he stayed, he could learn how to bring life to the plains again, water to the dried-up creeks, and hope to the land. The crystal at his belt pulsed softly, a reminder of the knowledge he already carried. But if he stayed, he could never return fully to the surface. The wind on his face, the sun on his back, the sound of the plains, all would belong only to memory. Cole rose slowly, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He looked around the chamber, at the glowing veins, the hovering objects, the pool of liquid, and the figure of light that had guided him this far. The figure extended a hand, glowing softly, almost like an invitation. Come. Learn. Guide. Protect. The whispers were insistent now, echoing the figure's message. He swallowed hard. He began, but no words could express what he felt. Fear, excitement, responsibility, and longing twisted inside him. He realized that whatever decision he made would define the rest of his life, perhaps even the lives of those above. He had to choose carefully. Cole stepped closer to the pool again, looking at his reflection, the reflection of the ranch above and the visions of the future. Then he looked at the staircase he had descended, the path back to the surface. It seemed distant, almost unreal. He could climb back and leave, returning to the life he knew, carrying only the memory of this place. Or he could step fully into the unknown, embracing the underground world, learning its secrets, and accepting its responsibility. His mind raced. Could he bear to leave? To leave the knowledge that could save his land? But could he bear to stay? To never feel the wind again? Never walk the plains? Never hear the familiar sounds of life above? The whispers sensed his indecision and grew louder, surrounding him with emotion so strong he almost staggered. Then a vision appeared. It showed the cowboy from centuries ago, the one who had discovered the first staircase. He had chosen to stay. The vision showed him learning, guiding, becoming part of the underground world, but also fading from the memory of those above. His life was long, filled with knowledge and power, but he had given up everything he loved on the surface. Cole's heart sank. Could he make the same choice? Could he give up the ranch, his cattle, the plains, for knowledge? The whispers responded, not pressuring, but urging him to think carefully. The choice is yours. The consequences are yours. No one will make it for you. Cole sank to the floor, resting his forehead against his knees. He thought of the ranch again, of the cracked soil, the thirsty animals, the hope he had carried every day. He thought of the surface world, simple, harsh, beautiful, alive. He could not abandon it, not completely. But he could not ignore the gift before him either. The underground world was alive, aware, and waiting. It could help, guide, and protect, but it required a human willing to bridge the two worlds. Finally, Cole made his decision. He rose slowly, a calm settling over him that he had not felt since the day he first grabbed his shovel. He looked at the glowing figure in the pool, and he spoke, though his voice trembled. I will learn, but I will not abandon the surface. I will take what I can, and I will return. I will help my world, and I will respect yours. The whispers changed, a soft harmony echoing in his mind. The figure tilted its head, and the pool shimmered brighter, responding to his resolve. Knowledge flowed into him, not all at once, but in pieces, images, feelings, and understanding. He saw how to guide water through the plains, how to nurture life without destroying it, and how to balance the surface world with the secrets of the underground. Cole felt stronger, smarter, more aware. The chamber seemed to welcome him, responding to his intentions. The floating devices hummed in recognition, the glowing veins pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, and the whispers formed a chorus, as if approving his choice. He was part of the underground world, yet not lost to it. He could navigate both, learning from the depths while living in the light above. He tied the crystal more securely to his belt and turned toward the staircase. The path upward was familiar, yet different now. He felt the knowledge of the underground in every step, guiding him, giving him strength. The whispers followed not as a burden, but as a companion. Cole realized that he carried the voices within him, a bridge between two worlds. As he climbed, the chamber began to fade behind him, the glowing veins dimming, the floating devices disappearing one by one. He reached the landing where the first chamber had been and paused. The whispers were softer now, almost like a lullaby echoing through his mind. He looked back, knowing he could return if needed, but understanding that the underground world had chosen him for a purpose. Cole emerged from the well into the sunlight of the Redstone Plains. The wind hit his face, warm and dry, the sun bright above him. The ranch stretched out before him, cracked and barren, but alive with possibility. He knelt and touched the soil, feeling its rough texture, imagining the water flowing beneath it, guided by the knowledge he now carried. He looked at his cattle, thin and restless, and a sense of hope filled him. He could help them. He could save the land. And though the underground world waited beneath his feet, its voices humming softly in his mind, he was not afraid. He had seen its depth, learned from it, and understood that the power it offered came with responsibility, not fear. Cole walked back to the ranch house, the crystal tied to his belt, the whispers in his mind guiding him gently. He thought of the work ahead, repairing fences, digging channels for water, finding ways to restore life to the plains. The drought would not last forever, and now he had the knowledge to help. He smiled faintly. The underground world had given him more than he could have imagined, but it was up to him to use it wisely. That night, as the sun set behind the hills, Cole sat outside his ranch house, listening to the wind whistle through the cracks in the walls. The voices beneath the earth were quiet, but he could still hear them in his mind, soft and steady. He knew they were patient, that they would guide him if he needed it, but also that the world above was his responsibility. Cole leaned back, feeling the cool air on his face. The Redstone Plains stretched out before him, vast and empty, but full of life waiting to return. He had faced the unknown, crossed into a world beyond comprehension, and returned with knowledge and purpose. The ranch, the plains, the cattle, the wind and sun, these were his world. The underground voices were a part of it now, a secret bridge that would help him keep it alive. He smiled and whispered to himself, "Let's see what we can do." And for the first time in weeks, Cole felt truly at peace. The journey beneath the earth had changed him, but it had also given him hope, guidance, and a purpose far greater than he had imagined. He was a rancher, a cowboy, and now a guardian of both worlds, surface and underground.